In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to submit contributions into Xcredit. I've already logged into Xcredit on the faculty source. You log in with your OASIS credentials. Next step is to click on the contributions link. It should say here on the front page, it gives you the high-level objectives for the use of Xcredit, which you may want to review. We'll click on contributions, and then we'll click on submission forms. Your only option is going to be submit a learning activity with assessments. Don't worry about it if you don't have an assessment included. You can use this in any other case. Hit Start Submission. You're going to choose the academic year. It's going to default to the current academic year. Choose the med level of the student. Give it a title. I'll just put in an example. Choose the date on which the activity will be. You may need to look at the calendar for your particular system in order to be able to choose a date. I'm just going to pick an arbitrary date here. You'll choose a time for your event. So this is when the session will actually take place. I'm going to say this is going to start at 9:10 in the morning, and the duration is going to be 50 minutes. Coding is an optional field. Don't worry about filling it out. The instructions is the instructions that will be displayed to the student for the session. So we might put, you will be expected to read this, the handout and the chapter and whatever it might be. So this will be displayed on there. Now the learning objectives will be in a separate area, so don't put your learning objectives in the instructions field, but this will be displayed on the instruction sheet for the students. The group size of the activity, we'll say this is for 155 students. We'll click on Save and Next Step. Now you'll notice across the top here we have a series of tabs that we're going to be going through each one of these tabs in sequence. Now you cannot just click on the tab to save. You do have to hit on the Save and Next Step in order as you go from tab to tab. Keywords are going to be pre-populated in for each system. You'll hit and add that down through here. These keywords are actually drawn from the USMLE Step 1 list, and you can have as many keywords as is necessary. These will be useful for searching across the curriculum later. So save and next step. First author, by default it's whoever you're logged in as, but if you're a staff member or a system leader submitting on behalf of someone else, you'll be able to choose whoever is appropriate in order to submit as them. And it's not necessary to put in the title and institution and phone number, just in case if you'd like to. Now, if you want, you can add a co-author. If there might be a presentation that's authored by multiple people, you can put in their first name, last name, and so forth. I'm just going to go back and leave it with a single author. Now, when you choose the first author, this will be the person who gets any email notifications about the status of the submission. The secondary or tertiary authors will not get email notifications. Let's go to Save and Next Step. Choose the activity type, and it is possible to choose more than one. For instance, you might have a long section that might be a lecture, and then it might have a quiz as part of it. This is not directly imported into the OASIS categorization of activity types. It is the same general list, however. We'll go to Save and Next Step. System, obviously you're going to choose which system this is. I'm going to say MIS. Of course, you can only choose one of these. Save and Next Step. Now it's going to list all the threads. Now if there's no thread associated with it, you just check this top box. But if there is, say this might be related to infectious disease and immunology, for instance. You can check multiple threads. This is going to determine who is asked to review the submission. So the thread leaders for the threads that have been checked here will get an email notification and be asked to review the submission. Save and Next Step. Now it asks us to choose where within the system will this submission be posted within the student source website. This list of sections is drawn from the student source through a database query. So you scroll down through the list and say, okay, this one is going to be here. Okay, and it's important to have the correct session, because this is where the documents will end up being made available to the students. Save and next step. This next step is just telling the organization if there is going to be need of the services of the simulation center, standardized patient, or team-based learning group. So in this case, none of those are required, so I'm just going to go to the next step. The next step then is you actually upload the resources. So I'm going to browse and go to my desktop. I'm going to go to my documents, and I'm going to say, here's my handout document. I'm going to open that. I'm going to give it as a display name. This is what's going to be displayed in the menu of the student source. Just going to part one handout. Of course, you'd want to have something a little bit more descriptive. This is just demonstration. You're going to check the box that it is a handout, and then it asks us, is it a pre-class version or post-class version? This might be useful if you have a handout in which you have some answers that you don't want to have disclosed before class. You might say, well, this is just a post-class version. So you may have differing versions of handouts. The same is going to be true for presentations, as you'll see before. But I'm going to say this is a pre-class version, and then I'm going to hit save, and then you can see it now shows this uploaded resource. Now I'm going to upload my presentation, hit open, and then I'll say part 1 presentation, choose presentation, and say, I'm going to say that's a post-class version of that particular presentation. And then I'm going to hit save. And then maybe there's a website. Say, for instance, I have a chapter that should be read in an online textbook. I could put in the URL there. So I'm just going to put in a placeholder. But I'm going to call it up-to-date article, and I'm going to say that that's also a handout, and it's a pre-class version. I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to say I've got an exam question document. I'm going to click browse, choose my exam questions, open that one, and say MIS exam questions. Now the exam questions are not going to be distributed via the student source. These are just going to be sent to the system leader for review and possible inclusion within various different assessments. So I'm going to hit save. So now I've uploaded 3 different documents, and I've uploaded a link to a website. Now, whenever you put in a URL, it's going to be added on the student source under the heading for links. So I think I've finished here with what I want to do. So I'm going to now click the Save and Next Step button, and it allows me to consider what I've done here. Maybe I'd say, well, I want to rename this one. Maybe I want to capitalize something, or fix a misspelling, or perhaps I've got another version. So after these are all submitted, they'll be reviewed, and the reviewers may suggest some revisions. So the faculty member or a staff member who's working with the faculty member can log back in and revise the submission. So for instance, maybe I've revised this handout now. I can log back in at a later time and to revise that, and I can click Browse, find the new version of that handout file, open it, and then hit Save. And that replaces the old version of the handout with a new version of the handout. And if I wanted, I could give it a new name here. I might say Part 2 handout, or Part 1 handout, version 2. Of course, you probably wouldn't do that because this will actually be displayed to the students, but I'm just indicating here how you can change the name of the title. This now changed the title of that particular document. You can also see the icons here indicate the type of documents that's involved. That's a Word icon. Here's a PowerPoint icon. This is a web icon. That's another Word icon. So you can edit these resources as needed, and then hit Save and Next Step. Learning objectives. Let's say that we're going to add new learning objectives. This is going into the next gen curriculum. Short name is useful for internal administrative purposes. It is not displayed to the learners, but maybe if you've got some naming scheme that helps you organize things, that's the place to put it in there. So I'm going to say MIS IM3. And then you want to give it a meaningful short description of the So, but this is only going to be a few words long. And then the actual learning objective is the full sentence or two that's associated with the learning objectives. Like the learner will be able to identify 3 signs of whatever it may be. Then you add keywords that are associated with that. Now these keywords are actually the same list that you saw earlier, but these keywords are associated only with this single learning objective. So we may have had multiple keywords associated with the lesson as a whole, but since you have multiple learning objectives, a learning objective might only be related to a subset of those keywords. So you choose which particular keywords is associated with. Then you choose the level of the learning objective in this last step here. Now the easy way to do this is simply to look at this list of example verbs. So you can say here, I've looked at this, be able to identify 3 signs of, and there's the verb, identify. So that's at a knowledge level of learning objective. Okay, then we hit add. Now I can continue to add more learning objectives in the same way, but it shows me up here at the top now, this is the first learning objective that I've added, and I can click on add a new learning objective and put in a second one, a third one, a fourth one, and so forth. But the learning objectives are entered in one at a time. For the keywords may be different for each of the learning objectives, as well as the kind of the learning level from Bloom's taxonomy may be different for each of the learning objectives. So for the time for this demonstration, I'm just going to enter in this single learning objective, save and next step. Now I should say that we did have an option here too for search and use existing learning objectives. That's not really going to apply in our first year of using this system, but it will be useful in future years. But let's just, you can search for learning objectives, say like, and I'm going to look for a particular year, hit get results, and we do have some historical ones here, although generally they're not usable because there was a lot of information put in that was inappropriate, like the faculty's name, the curricular week, and so forth, which is changing from year to year. But let's say for the moment we're done. Actually, I may go ahead and add that one just as an example. I'm going to check that box, check a box for one of these, and had a long list, a very long list. Just a moment. Now I'm going to add those selections. So now I've got a couple of learning objectives. Now I'm going to go save the next step. Now this is the last stage. You have 4 different options here. Most commonly used are going to be the first 2. One is hold the submission, which means I'm not finished with it. I've put in some preliminary information, but perhaps I haven't uploaded all the final documents. So it's just going to save it and allow me to go in and do another submission for another lesson. Or save and send to reviewer. In other words, this means that the submission is now complete. I've done everything that I need to in order to complete this, and it's now ready to go through the review cycle. Delete submission would be if, and like in this case, I'm just doing a demonstration. I really don't want all this to be stored, or maybe I really screwed up a lot of things. I just kind of want to start from scratch. Or if you've just been experimenting, maybe you're just learning how to use this system and you've put in some placeholder information, but you don't really want to use this submission. You can just hit delete. But this is going to remove everything completely. Or expedited submission should be a rarely used option, but we do realize that there's sometimes where submission is being done at the very last minute, and there's not adequate time to go through a review process. So this will immediately save and make the information available on the student source website. However, the appropriate system leaders and thread leaders will get an email notification, and they'll be expected to go back and review that after the fact. But we'd really like to avoid that process and instead have it go through the normal review process. I'm just going to hit hold submission for now. And you'll see that here's my learning activity list of my current submissions. So I have several demonstrations that I've got in here. And I can see my status that I've not yet submitted that. I can see the faculty name, the student level, the year, the status. I can click on the little status button. Actually, it's not doing anything in this case because it's already displaying everything. The status would display where it is in the review process if it's begun the review cycle. But if I needed to now go in and finish this submission, I could click on it again, go in and say maybe I'm going to upload some new file. I could upload the file and then go to finish submission, and then I could hit finish submission. It would go through the entire process. Or in this case, I'm actually going to delete submission, and it takes me back to the beginning of the process, and I can see here my other demonstrations. Now you'll notice I can also look at my contributions by several different sorts. So I can look at my status, I can look at the title, I can sort it by title or when it was last updated, when it was last reviewed, or the start date of the event for which it was submitted for. So in a nutshell, that's how we submit documents into the Xcredit review process.